Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Our session today is focusing on social media and engaging your parish and congregation in social media and using social media tools to enhance your online presence and communication. My name is Peter Turner. I'm here at the Diocese of Washington. I'm the Communications and Technology Director here. And I'm joined today by Kyle Oliver from Virginia Seminary. Kyle, if you just want to introduce yourself and what you do at VTS.
Sure. Yeah, I work in the Center for the Ministry of Teaching here at the seminary. We are a faith formation resource center, so our primary mission is in helping support teaching and learning in the church. And my job title is Digital Missioner and Learning Lab Coordinator. So my job is to, in particular, be thinking about how we do that work online. So that includes a lot of online resource sharing work and outreach, but also quite a bit of training and consultation in using technology across a number of areas of church life, including especially faith formation, but also dabbling in communications, evangelism, those sorts of things. So I think the part of the benefit of my job is I stand at this computer all day and take phone calls from people all over the church or emails or what have you, and just tend to have a pretty good sense of what the challenges are in congregations in very different settings, have a good sense of what questions people are asking, and can work in various settings, including settings like this, to help try to disseminate some of what we hope are good answers to those common questions.
Excellent. Just for our viewers today, if you have questions during the session related to this topic, please email training@edow.org. That's training@edow.org, and we'll seek to address those questions during or at the end of the session today. And I'll just mention that email address through the session as well. So to start with, I'd like to maybe, Kyle, if you could just describe, like, when we're talking about social media and all the areas around that and getting involved in it, what exactly are we referring to when we talk about social media, and why is this something that's important to congregations?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll reference a lot of the sort of standard reference works and books on these subjects as we go, because I am by far not the final authority on any of these things. So I thought I would read a definition. This is from Meredith Gould's excellent book, The Social Media Gospel, one of the really great resources out there for thinking through these sorts of questions. So I thought I would just cite her definition here. Meredith says, social media are web-based tools for interaction that, in addition to conversation, allow users to share content such as photos, videos, and links to resources. So, an emphasis on sharing, an emphasis on a variety of different media formats, and what I like about that definition is that it also is clear that these things are tools, and that's one of the common themes I think we always want to come back to is that social media is a ministry tool in the same way that a telephone is, the same way that a Bible is. And we should use them as such. I think social media also end up comprising a digital environment, the social media space. And so what makes them tricky is I think they're both tools and places. And so that I think requires some different kinds of thinking and theologizing in both of those sort of modes. So to put a finer point on that definition, I tend to think of social media as certainly including things like social networks, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, blogs. For all intents and purposes, a blog is not that different from a website. A good website is a big part of your presence online, whether or not you want to technically label a website something that is social media or not. It's an important part of these conversations, and hopefully all those kinds of things are getting integrated in your church's communications plan.
Excellent. Yeah. One thing I've mentioned in some other sessions is that is seeing the kind of the website, if you like, as the front door to the church on the internet, and that taking care of the website is kind of like taking care of the front door of the church and the front of the church, like making it look good and attractive and welcoming, and is as much important online as it is physically.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah, and also that social media has these different purposes that are kind of distinct from a website, kind of distinct from other tools that exist. So it's something where engaging in community and strengthening community as well as reaching out online. There are these different aspects to it.
Yeah, when I think about where websites fit into all that, I mean, one of the important things, I love that image of it's like your front door, and to run with that metaphor a little bit, I really appreciate I don't have a hard copy of this book, but another great book in this area is Speaking Faithfully by Jim Naughton and Rebecca Wilson. And one of the things that they say in that book is that social media are, quote unquote, where the people are.
Right.
And so even if you have a great website, that chances are a lot of your traffic is going to come from links from social media. In addition to, yes, if someone's looking for a church in your neighborhood, they'll probably Google churches in such and such a neighborhood. So the search engines are important there, but increasingly, I think web traffic is driven by links from social media because that's where people spend their time online.
Yeah, I think, and there is a question among some congregations who ask, in their particular demographic, it's kind of like, well, what about where the people aren't? Because if the members of the congregation are not perhaps engaged or involved seemingly in those areas, then what is the use for our congregation? I think one question we might look at is in terms of just getting started, and for a parish and parish leaders who are interested in really getting the whole enterprise started successfully. What are kind of in your view, the top things to firstly consider when starting out in terms of what are the priorities and what sort of strategy is a good one?
Yeah. Well, so there's I think an increasing consensus that a huge part of doing this work is having a team that is going to have some clarity about their role in doing this, and that team is going to look very different for different parishes. In some cases, it might be mostly staff. In some cases, it might be mostly volunteers. Some combination of that. Hard to know what will work in particular places, but it's certainly the case that trying to do this alone is as in any other area of our ministry practice, generally not a great idea. And so gathering a team for keeping your website up to date, keeping your social media channels updated, with posts, but also doing the in many ways more important task of listening to people on social media who are in your neighborhood or care about the same issues that you do, et cetera, et cetera. Doing all those things is it's a huge undertaking, and I think to do it well, you need a team and you need a plan. I think both of the books that I've already mentioned do a nice job of making suggestions about how to be strategic. And the one that I most appreciate is there's a chart in Speaking Faithfully that I think is worth the price of the book. And basically, what this chart, I'm pulling it up here on the iPad. what this chart does is it basically asks, okay, who are the different audiences that you're trying to reach? What do you want to say to those audiences? Imagine a big grid here. Who are going to be the people conveying those messages? What tools will they be using? When will they be, using them? And then, what's the accountability chain? Who's actually responsible for doing that? So I think taking that strategic, big picture look about like what do we want our social media presence to be about? I think that is a really key step in there. And so gathering the team and then asking those kinds of questions, I think is really important. The thing that I would want to add to that is, this is an area where I think we very much learn by doing. And if we don't balance an emphasis on strategy with at least a little bit of an emphasis on trying it out and playing around, we're never going to gain the fluency that we need. A lot of people sort of never get over the hump of feeling comfortable communicating with these tools because they are afraid to take the risk of actually doing that. So I think getting people comfortable first communicating on their own behalf on these tools, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the tool may be, you want to learn how to speak for yourself before you start speaking for your congregation. But then even when you do take that step into using some of these tools, on behalf of some official account for your church or what have you, there is some sense in which you just have to do it, and you have to get in there and play around and live in these worlds. I mean, I think the analogy is, when you are a minister serving, any minister serving a neighborhood, you want to get out there and experience that neighborhood and find out who are the important voices, who in our town is thinking about, whatever the big issues our congregation is concerned about. And you go and you meet those people and you listen to what they say and you respond to what they say. It's the same way online. It's just a participatory medium, and so you have to sort of get in there and mix it up. So have a plan, but also I think don't be afraid to experiment. And if you have a plan, you can experiment with some confidence, knowing that you're not going to say something inappropriate because you've laid out some parameters for what kinds of things you want to say. And so if this is a message that might be thought of as controversial or whatever, maybe I better say that from my personal account and not from the church's account. That sort of thing. But getting that balance, I think, of the planning and then the learning by doing, that would be my advice.
Excellent. Thanks, Kyle. For those watching today, we're discussing social media and getting the parish engaged effectively in social media. If you have questions during this session, the email address is email training@edow.org, and we'll seek to address those questions during or at the end of this discussion. Kyle, a question that's often asked and that I come across frequently is, in parishes with an older demographic and where the membership is not necessarily so engaged in living in the social media space, what do you have any words in terms of how perhaps the members can be encouraged or to get engaged in this way of community, in this way of being with each other, and in terms of how they can be encouraged or how they can be brought into that loop?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important question for us to be asking, because, again, like any good ministry, communications and evangelism ministries of a congregation, if it's not the work of the congregation rather than some subset of the congregation, you're probably going to get into trouble. And so I think this is a really important question to ask. I think there's a couple of things. One thing that I have heard used to great effect is storytelling, and helping to share with the congregation as a whole how these tools can be useful for communications or other things we want to use them for. There are so many compelling stories out there now of, a grandparent who couldn't travel to some major life event of a grandchild or a sibling or what have you, but was able to connect via Skype or FaceTime or something. More and more people now have these stories or have heard these stories of some really meaningful connection that would not have been able to happen without these digital communications tools. And so, if we're always talking about Twitter and Instagram and whatever, chances are, we might not be speaking real well the language of certain members of the congregation, especially on average older ones. But to tell a story like that of, hey, have you ever Skyped with your grandchildren? What would it be like if we Skyped with our partner parish overseas? Finding ways in which we can intergenerationally have positive experiences with the technology as a congregation, I think can really help. The other thing, I'm looking at my notes here. The other thing that I think is powerful here is an increasingly important concept called reverse mentoring. A lot of congregations are doing Saturday sessions where, as a sort of intergenerational activity, younger members of the congregation help older members to get up and running with some of this technology. Oh, my grandkids gave me this iPad for Christmas, but I don't know what to do with it. Well, so you do a sort of Saturday technology training and sharing day, and you build in some faith formation, and you build in some worship, and you turn it into a real parish event where you give opportunity for the younger people of the congregation to mentor the older folks, which is not generally the direction we're used to that happening, and it can be a really empowering thing. Again, to keep referring back also to what's out there, there's a great chart. I'm on page 15 here of Meredith's book of Social Media Gospel that kind of breaks down different social media channels use by generations, baby boomers, Gen Xers, etc. And so it's helpful, again, when you're thinking about if we're using these things as communications tools, what tool is appropriate for what group that we're trying to reach. And everyone is a unique individual, but there are patterns, and her chapter on thinking generationally can help you think through those patterns.
Kyle, do you think that one question rather that has asked, and it's kind of perhaps a sensitive area, is to what extent can these sorts of tools be useful in terms of pastoral ministry and counseling with individuals, or marriage counseling, or other aspects of pastoral work that clergy and leaders are often engaged in? Is there room or applications for that type of ministry with these tools?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, certainly anything you can use a telephone for, you can now do with added fidelity by doing a video conference, and you can pick up a few more cues. So I'm a priest in a congregation that does a fair bit of pastoral care, and I've frequently had to do that over the telephone because that's how the circumstances were. And I have not done that kind of pastoral care yet via a Google Hangout or Skype or what have you. But I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, and maybe sooner rather than later. If I were working with a couple and we're in some kind of situation, as is increasingly likely with the young adult cohort, where maybe we do have to do one of our premarital counseling sessions from a distance because of people's travel or what have you, I would certainly want to be able to see the couple. And so doing a hangout or whatever, I think would be important there. The other thing is, if social media is where people are sharing the details of their life, then of course a pastor would want to be there and to sort of take that in, not necessarily as a primary tool, but as a supplemental tool to the kind of relationships that you need to have. I mean, I found out recently that a parishioner of ours was in the hospital because I saw a post about it online, and I think that's increasingly the case, and so it's a great opportunity. I have a Facebook list and a Google Plus list where I have all of the people in our congregation that I'm friends with are in that list, and every now and then I'll pull that up and be able to go down and sort of get a quick, very imperfect but better than nothing sense of what is happening for those folks, what's going on in their lives, and I definitely think of some of the commenting that I do on those kinds of posts as a sort of low pressure, low stakes pastoral caring, and it has the additional benefit of being a sort of public thing, and so there's some modeling that happens there too, and so it models a sort of pastoral caring for each other that I think any congregation would want to be doing. So yeah, no, I think they're great tools. I always say they're going to supplement our in-person relationships, not replace. And occasionally they have to replace because of a move or what have you, or short-term circumstances. But by and large, I think the right way to think about this is that the online tools are a sort of added richness to the life that we live anyway, and that's what the research on how people relate to each other is saying. Most people relate online most with people that they are friends with, quote unquote, in real life. So these things are sort of extensions, integrated extensions, increasingly of our just regular social lives.
That's fascinating. A way of looking at and interacting with, like, for instance, members of a congregation in that way, and that's, I think, something that it would be available to many priests and many people involved in pastoral care. Is just looking at people online, seeing what's happening in their lives. I think that's a fabulous example. Mm-hmm. Do you have in mind any particular models or parishes or organizations where they are doing this work and doing it successfully that we could kind of hold up to say, well, here's a place where they undertook this and it's working out well. Mm. And whether in one social media network or another, that just seems to be going well.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas. Let me pull up. I'm going to share my screen here. Are you seeing?
I'm seeing the screen share. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've got, I hope, not too many tabs open. It's not. My screen is trying to catch up with my click. There we go. So this is the Facebook page of a parish that I have never been to. I have never met I've never met the clergy there or anyone who is a member. I forget how I originally sort of connected with them, but I continue to think that this is one of the best Facebook pages, church Facebook pages, that I have ever seen. This is St. Mary Magdalene Episcopal Church in Manor, Texas. I think what is so compelling about this Facebook page is that it communicates very clearly what this church is about, and it does so in a really inviting and engaging way that takes advantage of the real power of social media to communicate and to form connections. So as we look, can you see my cursor moving around?
Yes.
As well? Okay. I'll try not to move it too fast. I know that can get a little dizzying on screen shares. So you've got the message, their sort of tagline here: experiencing and sharing God's generosity. You've got that in English and Spanish on the banner here, which I think sends a clear message about the ministry of this church. And then as I scroll down here, I just invite you, I'll go slowly. I'm not gonna say anything for a second. I just want you to sort of take in the beauty of the images you're seeing. I do this exercise fairly often, and I don't think I've been disappointed yet to just blindly pull this page up and to just scroll through. I mean, these images are colorful. They give you a sense of who is a part of this congregation. There's always lots of pictures of young families. There's always pictures of food. There's this large picture here, I think, is very typical. You get the sense that this is a multicultural parish. This is a parish that values intergenerational faith formation. There's all kinds of seasonal gatherings that happen around food and around around celebration. And they're just really giving you a sense, I think, and I would imagine it would have to be fairly accurate, giving you just this great sense of what it's like to be a member of this congregation. There's a youth minister I know. I'll go over to his page. This is the page for his youth group. It's not quite as splashy. The quality of the photography is not super as crisp and clear and colorful. But I'll scroll as I talk here. Christian Hansen is this youth minister's name, and he said to me, if I can't show the kids in my youth group what it's like to come to youth group, they won't come to youth group. He's just so clear about that missional, like, a huge part of my job as the youth minister is to capture what it's like to be at our events so that when I'm asking people to come to those events, they have a point of reference, and that's interesting for them to come. People are done with doing church stuff out of a sense of duty. It's got to come from a sense of joy and excitement and opportunity. And here again, I just get an impression scrolling through this page. Sorry, it's loading very slowly. That this is a group that likes to do things together. They always look like they're having fun. And this is a great tool for him. He can say, show your friends what it's like to come to youth group by showing them this Facebook page. And so I think those are two examples of taking, and they're both on Instagram and Twitter as well, and it's almost more compelling on Instagram, I think, because there you just get the pure images. I mean, look at all this color, and these things matter. We've gotten calibrated now to want images. I mean, this is why Pinterest is so successful. Visual learners are just eating up all of this great visual communication, and so they're taking advantage in a really colorful way of sort of the best of what social media is all about. So I think in terms of the goal of communicating who are we as a congregation, or who are we as a youth group in this case, these are two really great examples. In terms of other kinds of case studies and whatnot, one thing I could commend to you is the case studies published. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry, I know I'm talking in big chunks here, but I want to make sure I get things in. The New Media Project, which is hosted by Christian Theological Seminary in, I think, Indianapolis. I may have that wrong. Anyway, they published 6 really powerful case studies about new media being used in a bunch of very different congregations, and some really thoughtful reflection goes on by the authors of those studies. So another resource to commend about groups that are sort of doing this stuff right in various ways.
Excellent. Thanks, Kyle. One final question as we round this up is concerning a question that often comes up from members of congregations, is the question of policies and privacy, and of taking photos of parishioners, of kids in the parish, and what is there a general rule of guidance in terms of what kind of thing, what kind of pictures and what kind of content is generally appropriate, and what parishes should be cautious of?
Yeah, I can give you an empirical sense from what I hear from folks about being challenges or not challenges, and the rawest empirical sense is that it just varies a ton. You know, we're coming, I think, out of an era where people were hyper vigilant and concerned about these things, and you know, really were hesitant about putting images of children up, period. I think we're coming out of that era quite a bit. I mean, a few practices to commend very specifically, and this isn't formal legal advice or anything, but if I'm posting on behalf of my congregation, I'm never tagging minors. I never want to, you know, in some photo say, oh, here's that person, and connect the image with that person's account. I would not recommend that. I know in some of these places the kids tag themselves, and you know, I think that, you know, raises some questions, and you have to sort of grapple with them. I've asked Christian about this, and he says he gets very little pushback from the families in his congregation. I know of a congregation closer into our DC area here. It's in Virginia, in, let's say, a community where there are a lot of people with national security concerns and privacy concerns, and they have resisted really doing any kind of ministry over Facebook, period. You know, and so as with all these questions, it's just going to depend on your congregation. I think a practice that's becoming increasingly common that I think is very smart is already in youth ministry, you've got the thing of the sort of universal consent form. So rather than doing 50 million permission slips over the course of the year, you do one sort of blanket permission slip. I know of a lot of youth ministers and clergy and church leaders who are building into their big blanket permission slips a photo release kind of statement there too, and under certain conditions, like we will post photos but we will not tag your child, etc. There's some people who've done some really good work on what do the sort of standard safe church practices that we follow in our work with minors, what do those mean in the digital realm? My friend Randall Curtis, who's been on these Hangouts before, put together a great lesson plan and sort of policy briefing, I guess, on using Facebook in youth ministry, and he recommends, you know, have a depending on what's appropriate in your context, either a group or a page that people can associate with, so that you do not have to be directly friends with the minors that you're serving, but they can associate with the group rather than in one-on-one ways with any particular youth minister. I think that's a fairly obvious outgrowth of the kinds of practices that we already have about not having one-on-one alone relationships between adults and children. So maybe I'll send Peter an email with some links to some of what I've been talking about. But I think that sort of blanket permission form approach seems to be working in an awful lot of congregations, and I think we avoid posting images at our peril at this point, because it just is so important to giving a sense of who our congregations are. Absolutely,
and one thing I'd perhaps add to that also is to have a mind and take care of the quality of the images, because there are so many possibilities and potential for images with phones and such, you know, devices that temptation might be to snap pictures everywhere and put those on, but having a concern for the quality and what sort of activities generally you would want to include in the scope of the pictures you put online,
Yeah.
And which ones not, so that you don't end up with, just like cat pictures, which one parish had been putting sort of that type of stuff on because they imagined that the members of the church simply wanted to hear from the parish. So anything is better than nothing. But having some focus in terms of, okay, let's include such things like the parish youth activities. Like, let's show an example. Let's paint a picture online of what this group is actually like, and iconic things that represent the life of the parish and the spirit of it, so that just having some recognized scope and focus for the images that go on.
Yeah, because increasingly we're reaching out to folks who don't necessarily have a context for what church is like. Or if they do, it's a context that many of our congregations would want to say, well, that's not who we are. And so, in both cases, thinking about these tools in large part as helping to give people a little snapshot, as it were, of that. Yeah, I just think that's hugely important.
Yeah. Kyle, thanks so much for being part of this discussion today on getting parishes engaged in social media. This session will be available online, and also things that we discussed in the session and links, etc. I'll be posting on our digital church website. That's edow.org/digitalchurch. You'll find links. Information that Kyle's mentioned during the session will be posting on there. So you'll be able to link to all those things from that website.
And the work of our center is very much a work for the whole church, and that's not even just the Episcopal Church. So anyone who wants to reach out to us, feel free. You can find me on Twitter at KMOliver and the center at VTS_CMT. I imagine Peter will put up a way of finding us on the link as well. But I'm here. This is what I do. I answer questions about this stuff, and I don't always have the answers, but can usually find you someone who does. So happy to offer that to anyone who has found their way to this video. Certainly. Great. Absolutely. Yeah. Kyle is absolute goldmine of information. So we'll definitely put a link to the ministry center on the website. Great. Thank you, Kyle, again. And just to note that upcoming session on December the 11th, What's Wrong with Our Website? The Keys to Understanding Successful Web Presence is the next online discussion in this series, and look forward to seeing people online for that. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Thanks, everybody.